Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to run your 2011 iMac off an external SSD drive, the OS and everything else. I've actually picked up a 27-inch iMac and I've also picked up a 21-inch. Today I'm going to show you on the 21-inch because I've already completed this on the 27-inch. So what you're going to need for this project is a 2011 iMac, and then get yourself a 860 EVO SSD drive and the Lacie Thunderbolt either 1 or 2 terabyte external hard drive enclosure. I was able to pick up the 2011 iMac for about $280 only, and I got the SSD for about $60 and the enclosure on eBay for about $70, somewhere in that range. Again, the hard drive I used was an Evo 860. I just feel like it's one of the more solid drives and a good choice for this project. And for the enclosure, I used the Lacie. I got a 2 terabyte Thunderbolt enclosure. I actually used a 1 terabyte Thunderbolt enclosure for my 27-inch. Basically, they act exactly the same. There's a few key parts, though, that you want to look out for. So I picked this up for about $75 on eBay. It was new in a kind of older packaging, but it's a lot cheaper. If you get them new, they're about $150 to $200. So what you're looking for is the Thunderbolt connection, and the Thunderbolt connection is built into the unit. The Thunderbolt connection looks like this. It's Thunderbolt 1, that's important. But basically, take a look at the drive. It's got the orange bumper. It's by Lacie, and you can pick these up anywhere, either online or on eBay. So the first step of the project is going to be to remove the orange bumper so you can get into the hard drive. Just do it nice and easy. Make sure you don't actually pull any cords, because it's very easy to pull this cord out since it's connected and attached. So slide this down the cord, but don't pull anything out here. After you get this far, what you want to do is you want to try to locate the 4 screws that you see here, and these are the 4 screws that you need to take out of the unit so that you can actually start removing the hard drive from here. So one thing I wanted to mention was this is a Thunderbolt 1 connection. They do make this in a Thunderbolt 2, which is backwards compatible, and a Thunderbolt 3, which might be USB-C. You want the Thunderbolt 1 because we're using a 2011 iMac, and that's the best thing that's compatible with that. A little bit later, I'm going to show you a speed test of the before and after running the OS on the 2011 iMac. Just keep in mind that the Thunderbolt 1 connection is required so you can get the full speed of the SSD drive. Keep in mind that Thunderbolt 1 is 10 gigabits per second, and that allows us to get the full capacity or actual speed out of the SSD drive that we're putting in here. So basically finished now taking out the 4 screws. Just make sure that you don't lose any of them because they're kind of a weird size and shape. And then once you have those done, we can actually move on to the next phase of the project. So once it's done, it should look like this. So once we've removed the 4 screws on the bottom of the unit, there's 2 more screws at the front here. This will allow us to remove the hard drive once we remove these 2 screws, and then this part is completed. So the unit I picked up has a 2 terabyte spinning hard drive inside of it. Since we'll be replacing that drive with our SSD drive, you can use the 2 terabyte drive for another project or another enclosure. Again, I actually bid on this on eBay, and a lot of them go for about $150, $120, somewhere in that range, even used. But if you wait long enough like I did, you can kind of sit there and wait for a good deal to come along. You can usually find them between $70 and $85 maybe before shipping. So let me finish by taking the screws out of the front plate here. Once these 2 screws have been removed, you can reach around and remove the front plate, and this will expose the spinning hard drive that's inside of the unit. Okay, now we're ready to slide the hard drive outside of the enclosure. Just make sure not to catch the cord when sliding it out. Once you slide everything out, you'll see that the 2 terabyte spinning hard drive's inside, and the next step is to remove that from the mount, which we'll do here in a second. Alright, now that we have the hard drive exposed, the next step is to remove this tinfoil film around the hard drive that keeps it basically attached to the mount. This tape is pretty sticky stuff, so please take your time. You want to remove the tape, but you want to reuse this later. Just note that this is the only thing keeping the hard drive on the enclosure. There's no screws after this point, so this is kind of important to keep. Alright, I'm back. It took me a little longer than I expected it to. Also try to do this as clean as possible. I'm not doing a very good job at it. You do want to replace this later. But once you have everything off, you can actually basically easily slide the drive right off the mount, and it should pop right out. And then once that's off, we are now ready to go ahead and add the SSD onto the mount. Okay, so now we want to actually take our Samsung Evo SSD drive, which is a SATA drive, and it should easily fit into the mount that we just removed the 2 terabyte hard drive from. Okay, so just pick up the mount and line up the holes here, and then basically slide in the SSD drive until you hear it snap. Okay, so the next step now is to actually put the tape back on the drive to kind of hold it in place. So go ahead and start putting back the tinfoil tape all around the edges of the hard drive. Okay, once we get all the tape back on the hard drive, we want to slide the new hard drive into the enclosure. Just make sure that it's all the way in, push it a couple times. Also make sure that you don't catch the cord on the sharp metal on the outside of the edge there. Once that's done, we basically want to find the 4 screw holes on the bottom and find the screws, and we need to go ahead and screw all 4 screws back in the system. So once this has been completed, we can move on to the next phase. Just make sure that everything's in there pretty tight. Now the next step is to take the front plate and pop that back in, and we're going to get ready to screw this back into place as well. And at that point, all the screws will be back in the unit. Once all 6 screws have been put in tightly, the unit is now fully functional. And we can move on to testing this unit in a few seconds. Before we do that though, one thing we may want to do is put the bumper back into place. While you're doing this, please make sure you don't pull the cord too hard. I've seen a lot of times where the cord will actually detach from the unit, and that basically destroys the unit. So take your time here and put back the orange bumper. What this basically will do for you is it keeps the unit safe from shocks and also a little bit of water damage. Is it necessary? No. Some people like it off because they like the silver color of the unit. I like to put them on just to protect the unit. Okay, now that we're done, the unit should look very similar to it did when we purchased it. Now it has an SSD inside of it instead of the spinning hard drive. Okay, before we actually start using the new drive, I wanted to show you the speed of the old internal hard drive that I got on the 2011 iMac that I bought for about 250 bucks online. As you can see, it's a spinning drive, it's 5400 RPM. So by looking at the Blackmagic results, you can see why I wanted to upgrade this to an SSD. A lot of people don't realize you can run your entire OS off an SSD external drive, and that's what we're going to show you, and we're going to show you the difference in speed and how to do it. Okay, the first step is to plug in the drive into your iMac using the Thunderbolt 1 connection. Once you do that, you're going to see a screen like this pop up. This is really important. Make sure that you choose your actual drive here, the actual SSD drive, otherwise you're going to erase your main drive on your iMac. After you do this, go up and click the erase button at the top, and it'll drop down a list of different things and different options. Make sure you choose the format you see here in the scheme, and then actually name your SSD drive so that you can recognize it later. When you're done with everything, you can go ahead and click the erase button here. It should only take a few seconds after you do this, and you'll see it go through a series of processes, and then this window should pop up and you can click decide later here. After this has been completed, you're going to notice that the drive now has been erased, it's been formatted, it has all the space on it, and you're ready to put the OS on this drive and boot from it. Okay, make sure you've actually downloaded the version of the OS you want to install. I'm going to be using the High Sierra. I got it directly from the Mac store, which I recommend doing. Go ahead and click on this, and this will load up the OS installation. It'll take a couple seconds, and then you'll see a screen pop open, and it's going to say continue. And then you want to agree with the terms, and agree again. This is important. Now make sure you click the button here to choose a different drive, and make sure you choose your SSD drive. Do not choose your original iMac drive, but choose the SSD drive that you just plugged in using Thunderbolt. Once you're done, you want to click next there, then type in your password and click the button called Add Helper. So once you click on Add Helper, you're going to notice that the screen changes and it's going to start loading the OS onto the SSD drive through the Thunderbolt connection. Once that process has been completed, it's going to take a little bit of time there. You can go ahead and restart your system here. Just make sure the screen comes up and click on Restart. The next screen you'll see is this screen, and it should take maybe sometimes up to 20 minutes here. Once that's completed, you're going to notice that the welcome screen comes up, and it looks like it's a brand new iMac with a brand new OS. And go ahead and fill this out as you normally would with any new system. Again, fill out these screens as you normally would, data and privacy, and then I actually chose this setting. You can choose whatever you want here. I wanted a clean install of the OS, and this is all going to be an install on the new SSD drive, external drive. Okay, once your iMac has been set up, you're actually going to be running on the SSD drive. Your entire OS will be on that external Thunderbolt SSD drive. So once I'm in here, I want to start and set up a couple more settings to ensure that I always boot from the SSD drive. The first thing I like to do is go down here to the launch pad, and from here you want to go ahead and click on Other, and then click on Disk Utility. And you'll see that you're actually running on the SSD drive here, and it'll tell you the size of the drive, but this will ensure that you're running off the SSD drive right now for testing. After I do that, the next thing I like to do is go ahead and click on System Preferences, and then find your startup disk. Now in here you'll see that you have the two drives, your original hard drive and your SSD drive. It won't let you select the SSD drive right now. You have to go down to the bottom here and unlock it, and you can go ahead and do that by clicking on the little lock here. Once you click on Unlock, you'll be able to go ahead and it'll ask you for a password so you can unlock the actual disk system here. So go ahead and type in your password and click on the Unlock button. At this point, it's going to allow you to select both of the drives, but make sure you select the SSD drive. And basically this is going to make sure that this is your boot disk for now on. And then you can go ahead and click on the Restart button here, and this is going to reboot your system. Go ahead and hit Restart, and you can see how fast your new system will load. Okay, this is the first time your system's booting up on the new SSD external drive with the Thunderbolt connection, and you can see that it's going to be much quicker. Before it would take about a minute and a half with the 5400 spinning drive. Right now with the SSD drive, you can see it takes probably close to 20 seconds or so, and then you're done. Okay, now for the fun part. You can see that you have the SSD up in the corner. You're running the entire OS off this SSD. This is High Sierra on a 2011 iMac, and you're running off an external drive. So let's go ahead and open up Blackmagic to see the speed difference that this is running on. Before we were getting like 60 megabits per second. Now we want to make sure that we are running off of the actual main drive here with Blackmagic, and we'll go ahead and just verify that before we run the test. And once we verify that, we can go ahead and go back down, click Start, and then we can go ahead and click the main button to start the test for the actual drive here. When we click on it, we'll see that the actual SSD drive is doing about 350 megabits per second on the right, and on the read, which will come here in a second, we're looking at around 380 to 390 megabits per second. And we'll actually run a few more tests here so you can see it, but basically the reason this is so exciting is because we bought a 2011 iMac for about 280 bucks, and we actually bought an Enclosure with an SSD drive, Thunderbolt 1, and we're able to run the entire OS and the entire system off this SSD drive. And what it does basically is it makes it into a brand new computer. When I put this next to a more recent computer, maybe a 2014, 2015, 16, it's very similar in almost every capability. I mean, I put a lot of RAM in this system, and I can edit videos, I can do whatever I want in this system based off the capability of the SSD drive. And also it's exciting because it's a very easy fix, even if you're not that technical. If you follow the video, you can see that it took me basically about a half hour, maybe even less, to get this whole system running on the SSD drive. And the results are, you can't argue with the results. I mean, here I'm going to open up a few different things like Safari. You click on it, it's open in 2 seconds, 1 second. Before it would take 5 or 10 seconds on a spinning drive. I can go into any type of program that I want to. Let's say Maps, you click on it and it's going to be opened within a second as well. So basically the SSD drive is going to be a world of difference, and you're going to notice it right away. And as I go through a few more tests here just to show you the difference in speed, just please make sure you subscribe to my channel. I have a brand new channel I'm trying to get some subscribers with. I'm going to be doing a lot of these technical videos in the future. I also do travel videos, I'm going to do auto videos, and I do technical videos of all different sorts, and including planes. I do things on airplanes, commercial jets. Anyways, if you want to basically subscribe to my channel, I would love that. And I appreciate you watching the entire video, and if you have any questions, definitely you can write some comments in the description below. Thank you very much. Please subscribe.